ascent to the Asbury Park Crest at 2 River Times and Star Lettering goes to the main lobby of the municipal building and on the municipal website. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilman Yassin?
Here.
Councilman Trigiano?
Here.
Councilman Ballard?
Here.
Councilman Yangstrom? Councilman Zipperich?
Here.
Councilman Horgan?
Councilwoman Horgan is running a few minutes late. She will be here, and so is Councilman Langstrom. But since we have a large agenda, let's just start into it right away. And I know we have our municipal engineer here, so Laura, why don't we deal with 2B engineering first?
Hi.
Hey.
So, I'll be relatively brief just by way of updates. There hasn't been many things that have changed. Obviously, the road program is underway. We do expect that that will be completed by the end of next week. You know,
Councilman Yangstrom is here, just for the record. Thank you, Brian.
assuming that weather remains favorable. In addition, we still have Lucas has to finish the work over at South Street and Hudson on East Bergen. The telephone pole was actually relocated, but the guy wire, we're in the process of still working out with them. But I'm hoping at this point we're nearing the end so we can get them out there and finally get that finished and closed out. As it relates to the senior center, I'm happy to report that the fire suppression system, those plans and specs are now out to bid. We will be receiving bids on September 24th for that, and then we'll be in a position to recommend award of the contract. As it relates to Eastside and Mohawk Pond Park, those improvements at this point are now substantially complete. The items that are remaining, obviously the council will recall we did take the building outside of the scope, and we did put setting in the shed outside of the scope. So what remains in the scope of the project is the landscaping plantings over at Mohawk Pond, as well as just final restoration and cleanup over at Eastside. So we do have a schedule from the contractor to do the landscaping and final restoration, and all that should be done by the end of next week. I did ask him to wait on the trees, so I only recently cleared him to plant the trees over at Mohawk. The other thing I think important to report is that Pearl Street was out to bid, and it's likely to be recommended for award, I think, at the end of the month.
September 25th.
Yes, so with that, barring any questions, I think that kind of completes the update for this past month.
One update that I would have based on the residents' update is on Bergen Place. Our work there, they're happy with what has been done. However, the common denominator issue right now is that evidently with respect to the planting that was done by the contractor, they claim it's all crabgrass. I don't know the difference between crabgrass and finite grass. So maybe take a look at it, but there is a 2-year bond on that. So we should, if in fact they planted grass that is not surviving, either because of climate or because of inferior grass, that should be part they should be given.
Where was that near? What location?
On
East
Bergen
Bergen.
Place, yeah, East Bergen Place, yeah. So it was the follow-up. Let's just, before we get carried away, that's, everybody seems to be complaining about that. I don't know.
Actually, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, okay.
And Laura, did you mention when the county was gonna come in and do that intersection?
So I'm still awaiting final word on the county. Last I checked, they had received bids and were anticipating award of the contract. I'm happy to follow up with them because it has been some time. I do think they're in a position to recommend or have a pre-construction meeting shortly, but again, I'll follow up with them relative to all the dates. But I know that that's also been a concern of residents, is the condition over at Broad and East Bergen as well.
Okay, thank you.
So does anybody else have any questions of our borough engineer on the items that either were contained in the September 3rd report or what she's told us about today?
Just Mayor, to clarify, so we've got 3 additional easements on Range Plaza to finalize this evening. They'll be introduced. Pearl Street is actually being awarded, or resolution 2 award is actually tonight. Bellhaven Playground Equipment, there's 2 items that are being taken out of that contract to purchase them in advance, so that way we can have the products delivered built and delivered in time for the contractor to finish the project, so we're reducing some of that lead time. And the next meeting is when we're looking at awarding the contract for Bellhaven. The bids will be open, recommendation forthcoming. And the East Side Park building purchase, that resolution is on for this evening.
Yeah, unless there's any objection, I intend on moving on those pro forma resolutions that are engineering resolutions that are contained in a rather long agenda en masse. So if there's any questions on those resolutions, let's see if we can articulate them now to save a lot of time later. Any?
It's just like we did last,
Yeah.
at the last meeting.
So, okay, I guess you're fine. I know you're fine, but thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
See you later.
Okay, you're up next. Just introduce yourself for members of the public and we will proceed.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Stacia Scuduto from Commercial Utility Consultants regarding the energy aggregation program. Just to bring you up to speed, the bid documents as required per Title 14 were sent to both Board of Public Utilities and the Division of Rate Counsel. We need to do that every single time. There is a new municipality looking to enter the program. We did that. Both of the divisions offer comments, which you may have received an email copy of maybe about a week and a half ago, give or take. We typically go through them, even though they're just comments, which we can either accept or reject. We go through them in detail to make sure that we didn't miss anything, or because we were adding a renewable option to this as well. We wanted to make sure that they saw that, so we do have complete responses confirming that there is definitely, compliance with every section that they've noted. And things like that. So the next step then is on Friday, we will be sending the bid documents out to all licensed New Jersey suppliers. We asked for notice of intent to bid so that we are aware of ahead of time. We have the auction date scheduled for Wednesday the 25th at 11 a.m. We'll start to accept bids. It'll close around noon. I can send Z a link if anybody really wants to take a look at it. It's pretty anticlimactic until about the last 5 minutes. And then we will also then send a complete summary of all of the quotes that we received, as well as any recommendations. I will come back to go over those quotes with you in any detail with whatever you might need, so that you can either accept or reject those quotes on that day.
What probably makes sense is if you can give us like a 1-paragraph summary as to your recommendation in advance of the meeting.
Yes.
It may obviate your appearance.
Okay, yeah, we will send that earlier that day. The only thing that I would note is that the quotes are only good for that day. So we will have put in there that they needed to be held until that evening, because we know you have a meeting that night. Okay?
So to clarify, the reason we're doing the auction that day is because that same day, a selection has to be made. And so that's why Stacey's here today also to give you a heads up on the process, so that way that day we're not, we try to get as many of the questions about the process out of the way from today.
I'm comfortable with the process, and I understand why that's the way the process is. I just wanted to make sure that when we're getting back from the auction, we'll be getting back tiers from each of the companies. Is that correct? We'll be getting different tiers of clean, renewable energy versus, again, percentage, therefore?
So what we requested in the bid documents is what we call our standard quote. So this would be, if you want to liken it to the apples to a JCP&L rate, right? So this would be your standard savings option. And then in addition to that, we asked for options for a 50% renewable quote, 75 and 100% renewable.
Okay, great.
So you will see all of what they are, and the way that we outlined it so that the suppliers are aware is that if you were to choose and there's a winning bidder, that we have the lower quote, and then folks can opt into the higher
Excellent.
renewable.
So we could put out the notice and it could give both options to residents?
It will have all 3 or 4 options.
That's amazing. That makes me very happy.
So again, it's all dependent on what you accept or reject that evening, and after that takes place, assuming we get good bids, we will work with Z and Pam to get the resident communications together. We will start the outreach. and get all of that moving. The only thing I want to note for everybody as far as setting expectations, because we're coming up to the winter months, we typically, don't get good rates to start in a winter timeframe, so we actually asked for rates that would start effective February.
So the outreach would look like something like this. Mid to end of November, we would send out a letter to all residents informing them of what happened, what the process is like, and what the rates look like, as well as all program information, and that starts the opt-out period. And that would go for how many days?
30 days.
30 days, and in that time frame, they can opt out, call into the call-in center, and we would also host public outreach meetings. So we would schedule those and include that information in the letter so people can attend as well.
So I think it would be helpful, since we have, despite what a lot of people say, we have limited staff, if, as part of your recommendation, you also prepare, since you're the professional, the public notice that you would recommend us to put out, and all we do is we paste it and send it out. That way we don't have to worry about editorializing it.
It's all done, we've
Already
reviewed it
done.
already, and we've got a draft we'll circulate, probably sometime at the end of, around October.
Okay,
And it's an opportunity for people to opt in if they want to.
voluntary, sure.
Well, again, if you accept the rates, everyone would automatically get the lower rate. The renewable options is something that they could opt into for the higher, because again, we anticipate those would be a little bit higher than what your JCP&L rate might be.
So there's an opportunity if the Environmental Commission wants to do education outreach about the benefits of opting for clean renewable energy, if that's something they wanted to take on upon
We could
themselves.
tie that into
We
our
could do
public
it
outreach
and
meetings.
a
Okay.
separate outreach.
Great,
on
because
that,
I know that's something
absolutely.
Sustainable Jersey is really focusing on right now.
When we do those public outreach meetings, we could give some time to the EC to
Coordinate
speak
it all.
about
That would
it.
be great.
Any other questions? If not, thank you for attending.
My
Nice
pleasure,
evening.
thank you.
So, why don't we move along and going down the agenda? Pam's gonna be here for a while. Let's get Peter up here in finance. Go around.
Hello.
All right, I just have.
Okay, first of all, we got your report. Anybody have any questions on this report? If not, how are you?
Very well.
Good. We have a couple of resolutions. Tax sale resolutions are no issue. Does anybody have any questions on? Okay. Cancellation of various tax exempt because of disabled veterans under state statute, that's easy enough. We are recommending the appointment of Dina Anastasio. Anybody have any questions on that?
My only question about that is the title. I believe she's getting the title of administrative assistant.
Senior administrative assistant.
Okay, is that what, the position that was there before?
No, it's not the same title.
So why the title change?
That is probably a subject more appropriate for executive session.
Okay,
Because it's personnel.
Right.
okay.
We have to also adopt a resolution that permits Peter to pay any and all outstanding indebtedness between meetings. That's standard, it's not a problem. And then also, we're going to be ratifying the Length of Service Awards program for the annual payments to the volunteers. That is also not an issue. Having discussed that, so item number I is discussed, and we have discussion items. Is there anything that we have to reach on those, or?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions of Peter?
Hi, Peter.
I've talked more than you did.
Okay, we had a finance meeting, so we're.
Well,
that's
I-
fine, that's fine.
All right, the record should reflect that Councilwoman Morgan has a.
Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you.
worked
That's
till
great.
5 o'clock. I
Thank you.
left early, but those ferries are slow.
Next, we have
Should move all those
emergency
first.
management.
Flew all
Tom.
the way. I left early.
This is on emergency management. Okay. So,
I'll
we
talk
don't-
about it
we don't
if you
have
want.
any issues. Does anybody have any questions for Tom on emergency management?
We'll be having a committee meeting, it'll be October the 11th. I'm gonna actually send out the agenda to all the council folks if you wanna swing by. It'll be later on in the day, not as early, closer to 5 o'clock, but I'll get that out to everybody.
Secondly, since you're up here, we have the fire marshal code enforcement report. We're grateful we were all received a report dated September 4, 2019, that is rather comprehensive and is what we need to review. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions other than specific issues on various summonses and stuff like that, which we should discuss? But basically, overall operations, because I think the report is basically helpful.
Okay, fire prevention month is starting. They're getting the schools all scheduled, so the first 2 weeks in October will be very busy for us. In between trying to do everything else we're doing, plus the property maintenance, we also have a lot of stuff coming up that first court date that the guys have been working on now. So we're looking forward to a very busy first 2 weeks of October.
Do you still use Smokey the Bear?
We use anything we can. We have Sparky. We have still have Sparky.
Who?
Sparky, the dog.
Oh, Sparky the child dog.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
One question.
There you go.
On your report, the code enforcement fees compared to 2018 are like more than half of what we collected last year.
Had a busy year. It's been a good economy apparently. People are coming in and out, more apartments are coming up, and a lot of that are COs.
So is the 2018 number for the full year and the year-to-date?
Correct.
For through September?
Yeah, well, we've taken a dip in other places. It's just right now, you know, the COs we're busy. And that's with sales of homes as well as rentals.
So do you expect that year-to-date number for 2019 to approximate 2018, which is like 90,000?
Looks like that so far, but if I knew that, I'd play the lottery tonight. But again, this happens, you know, every 3 or 4 years. You know.
Well, I think that one of the dips is landlord registration statements are half. I mean,
We're still looking,
inspection fees.
so we're also challenged with looking through some, you know, records that, you know, again, just trying to reorganize the office and find some other stuff out. We're looking at a lot of stuff, so I'd be happy to report that to you personally, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, have a good night.
You too.
Chief? I told you, I'm moving it right along.
Lots of chiefs out there tonight.
All right, first of all, there's the Section 1033 program. You want to discuss that for a second?
Sure. Just the 1033 program is from the borough, or specifically the police department, to be able to obtain military surplus equipment. Before anybody panics, it's just not looking for vehicles or weapons. The examples of the things that we get are Pelican cases that carry equipment. They're plastic cases with padding inside for like cameras and things like that. They're expensive. Normally we get them for free. Binoculars, night vision equipment, things like that. Anything that's more than that, specifically anything that's a vehicle, requires a separate resolution by the council for that specific item. So it doesn't authorize us to get those type of things. It only authorizes what I would consider like incidental things, cases, binoculars,
Based upon that
office
clarification, I
equipment.
think we're all in favor of it.
Yeah, I was worried.
Yeah, it's not for the big stuff.
Rolling.
That's
It's
not what
like,
it has a lot of.
it's like chairs and things like
Okay.
Yeah,
that.
no, that's fine. Okay, then we go on to, you're recommending a promotion, which is a personnel matter?
Right, but I
Is
think
there any
you're.
questions? Yeah, there was a memo attached.
Yeah, the memo's attached, it's self-evident that, you know, why the recommendation is made based upon merit.
If there's no concern, we'd like to move ahead with that one for the next meeting. The following
Sure.
4 resolutions are from the next meeting.
Yeah.
But before I go ahead and make those offers of employment, I just want to see if there's any concerns.
Any issues or not? Okay.
The final one, just for clarification, the appointing of SLEO 1, that was because we have, every summer we appoint SLEO 1s to patrol our parks. This year we had saved a little money for various reasons and we have some left, so we want to try a program for a relatively short period of time, probably until around November 1st or December 1st, where we'll have a SLEO 1, which is one of our unarmed officers down in the business areas, both on the east side and west side, doing some foot patrol and some quality of life enforcement, parking enforcement, things like that. It's really a bargain we think about is $12 an hour to have an officer out there just doing the type of stuff that we don't necessarily have time to do with our regular officers all the time.
The highlight of this is having that foot patrol officer, someone downtown creating that presence, especially around the holidays. You know,
foot.
people with, on foot, so issues with pedestrians, you know, trying to get across crosswalks, cars parked where they shouldn't in terms of fire zones, bicycles on sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. That's quality of life in a shopping district and a business district. We'll be able to have this SLEO assist with that, and see how this program works out.
Nancy, would that include the business district on Shrewsbury Avenue car as well?
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah, both.
Great.
West
Both.
Side, East and West.
Okay, we've got your report, thank you. Regarding the street signage pedestrian activated solar beacons, anybody have any questions on that? It works well in Bergen County and Hudson County and
This just basically authorizes the borough to enter into an agreement, or authorizes us to enter an agreement with the county where we would install the signs or the beacons and they maintain it, I believe, is the arrangement. So,
And that's because it's on their street.
it's their street. One was Front Street near English Plaza, and the other one was Broad Street near Pinckney Road, both of which have been problematic intersections for us.
Great. That's good.
So, we got a sample agreement from them, Chiefs reviewed it, and more, and we sent it over to Greg for his legal review. So at some point, either the next meeting or the upcoming meetings, we'll have that.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief?
Quick question, Chief. Again, thank you. I thanked you earlier today for the, sending out the officers to monitor River and Tilton.
Right, no problem.
Yeah. The question is, are we gonna review, some kind of traffic calming there after all the construction is done? Because, again, you know, I've talked for years about the need for a four-way stop there, especially during the school year, where there's a lot of traffic, early in the morning and late in the afternoon.
Laura and I and the administrator have all discussed it kind of offline. It didn't, as you know, there were some larger plans that didn't make it into the final plan, I think, for Tilton or for River Street. But we still were discussing some more simple fixes that would, and we're still back and forth between River and Layton and River and Tilton, but or both, but whatever one, you know, depending on what you apply to it, in my opinion, is where you get more bang for your buck, if you will. But I do understand, and our officers, and I did talk to the police commissioner just today about the congestion at River and Tilton during school times, and it is considerable. I mean, the construction's not helping, but it is an intersection that needs some attention.
And again, my observation is that at that intersection is where that downward slide on the river starts, and that's where they're picking up speed, and nobody's really, you know, conscious of all those small children that are walking, and even, you know, the regular like me who walk. So.
Yeah, it is still on our radar. I think River Street is still coming up. It's still pending for some construction, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Little, public utilities.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Hi, Cliff.
Hey, Cliff. So I submitted a report. I want to make sure that residents are adhering to the brush pickup schedule. I know we had some major storms that sort of altered the plan a little bit, and we've worked with people on that. But after we're finished with our east side collection, we're going to make sure code enforcement is out. Actually, west side is this week. We'll be making sure code enforcement is out. Town began to pile up a little bit last month. And then outside of that, I want to make sure that I mentioned that the lead and copper plan was approved by the DEP. We did our 60 samples, tier 1 locations around town. Everything came back below the action level, so we're exactly where we need to be.
And the alert went out this afternoon, so I'm sure many residents got it.
Okay, great.
Anybody have any questions on the report or any issues that have to be brought up at this time?
Real quick, the painting project that was started during the summer down at County, has that moved forward any?
That's the trim path, yeah, Z and I have been talking about improvements to Count Basie Park, including that, and there are a couple other things we're looking at. So we are working on completing those projects, absolutely.
Okay. Any timeline?
There's a couple things that we need to do, but we're working on that, and I'll update you as soon as we can.
No set timeline, Councilman, at this point. In other words, I can't give you any concrete time, but it's something we're working on.
It's in the budget.
Well, that's where we
But
could
it's
develop the plan and.
What I'm saying is, if it's in the budget, you know, we
It's
can.
a small painting
but-
project, they actually started and.
Okay, I don't know.
Stopped, and then.
Okay. I thought maybe it was a major thing, because if it's not in the budget, we're gonna have to wait, you know, for next year.
No,
Okay.
understood. Nobody knows that better than me.
Any other questions?
Okay.
If not, thank you, Cliff. Tom?
Good evening.
Good evening, Tom. So, we're going to discuss the parking kiosk purchase resolution. Okay, anybody have any questions on that? Maybe you can give us a little background as to what led us. I know you've been working on a number of different options, and this is your recommendation.
Sure. This has to do really with two things that motivate this action. One would be a want to upgrade the nature of paying for parking, starting with the English Plaza lot, to go from pay by space to pay by plate, which is a much more effective way to offer parking, to both vend it and to enforce and monitor it. The second part of the action is to say that our machines are now at least 5 years old. The youngest would be 5 years old. And they are in need of a couple of upgrades that must be done in order to keep them rolling. One would be to install a new telecom modem to go to 4G service, because Verizon is not going to support the 3G service that we currently have after the end of this year. They're basically sunsetting that kind of modem. And we want to install light bars on the equipment that will make them more visible, because there is a problem with that older equipment that it doesn't have a light bar. And adding a light bar and adding the modem and not having a warranty, because the machines are out of warranty, will cost us roughly $5,000 per machine over the next 2 years. So we'll be saving $25,000 in expenses against the $50,000 and change for the expenditure, getting then 5 new machines for basically $25,000 net after 2 years, and we'll have better service. We get a 2-year warranty, which we've negotiated with the vendor, as opposed to the standard 1-year warranty on the hardware and the software parts of the purchase.
Why is it only a 2-year warranty?
It has only been a 1-year warranty for
I know
since
that, we
forever.
got chipped on the first one. So
Well-
why only 2? Is that the?
Mayor,
Is that
I
the
just
going
delivered
rate?
an extra year that nobody else has ever gotten. So, why only 2?
I mean, is
don't
that,
know.
what I'm saying, is that the standard? Is
No,
that-
one is the standard.
One is the
Yes,
standard.
I'm sorry, I was not
I would
understanding.
think that, you know, they'd give us a little bit more warranty on these things.
They
They're
just
saying
did.
they're such
They
great
just
products, they should be able to warranty.
They are. I've used them since 2003, this particular line of product. In my house. No.
So Mayor, you asking to renegotiate that to maybe 3 years? Is that what this?
Number one, I didn't know what the standard in the industry was. And so I guess the standard in the industry is what we had, which is not acceptable in the future, but at least we know what the standard is. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with the 2 years.
Understand that.
Technology changes.
Are you?
Choice.
Yes, and understand, just to clarify, that warranty is on, on hardware and software, basically, the components.
It's like an auto
It's-
warranty, you buy a warranty, but nothing's covered.
Right, but we have 1 year for labor, and that's pretty good. And beyond that, we have to be careful not to spend too much on labor by being able to diagnose the problems ourselves.
What is the main thing that usually goes in these systems? Is it the battery,
Printers,
the printers?
yeah, and bill acceptors, they're the main things to go, but these are hardwired machines. The
Okay.
5 that will be in English Plaza, so they're
Right.
gonna perform better than the solars.
Okay, and would those two pieces be like normally covered? You said hardware and software, but I'm just being
Yes.
picky in details. Those are the components that normally, when somebody gets these machines, they're asking to have these replaced within the 2-year frame?
Normally they're covered for 1 year, they'll be covered for 2.
Okay.
And they're kind of modular, it's not that complicated, but they're costly.
Right. What would like the component usually cost if it was out of warranty for the printer?
I'd be guessing,
Who the heck-
honestly, but I
so
don't know the
Thank
cost.
you for your
of it.
honesty, I was just wondering.
So, this is going to go on the English Plaza lot
Yes, sir.
and White Street or not?
Not yet.
Not yet. So, what happens to the existing machines we have on English Plaza?
The existing machines were almost destroyed in the construction project. They were removed by the contractors in May, which I'm happy to say was before I arrived, but they're not in condition to be refitted for the things we want to do.
Yeah, because I was on the council when we bought those machines. The selling point by our former administrator and the people who advised us at that time is that these machines were so tactile and so mobile that they could essentially be picked up and moved with almost effortless ease. So what happened?
They can be picked up and moved with almost effortless ease if they would be done by the vendor or someone who took great care of the machines. That apparently didn't happen.
I think we need to talk in executive session based on what your answer is.
Yeah, then, what's the?
I mean, do you
recourse
agree
here?
with
They
me,
can't just
Councilman?
destroy the equipment and.
I mean, I think we have to talk about this in executive session with our attorney. I'm very troubled by what you just said.
I am as well. I have no facts about that, however. I started in June and I don't have any personal knowledge.
Yeah, sounds like a larger conversation than right now, that seems like
All right,
it's
so
gonna
we're
get.
gonna have to have that conversation, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Mr. Kalu, did you say that the machine, some of the machines we currently have are obsolete? They're 5 years old and they're out of date?
No, they would have to be retrofitted, if that's the correct word, with a proper telecom modem, and we'd like to add the light bars to make them more legible, if you will.
Can I ask a
Okay.
question? Even if they weren't destroyed, would it be worth putting them back in, or how much lifespan do they really have left?
Well, that's only a guess depending on technology and
Okay.
changes, but if they weren't damaged,
Correct.
would they be worth spending $5,000 on each when they only cost $10,000 5 or 7
And
years
that's how
ago?
much it would have been to
Yeah.
reinstall them?
Yeah, the answer is it's time. To
Okay,
take
so
advantage of-
regardless if they had been destroyed, which is a whole separate conversation, regardless if that was,
Right.
it still would have been time.
Correct.
So really, I mean, that's just.
It's time
we're
because
complicating
we
the
have
conversation.
the opportunity to nail a 2-year warranty, and we have the opportunity to get the light bar and the upgraded
Okay.
telecom modem as
So
part of the
regardless,
deal.
it was time, even if we had
Yes.
crashed the car or the car was getting old, it was time.
Yes.
But could
Okay.
they have been sold or you know,
Pardon?
gotten some value out of them?
There'll be scrap, there'll be some components that
No
might be
town would have
saved,
wanted them.
but not to us. We're not able to make use of the technology.
It concerns me that it seems like we're getting in a cycle of continually upgrading or replacing parking meters, because they go out of date and they keep updating pretty frequently.
Yeah, that's,
Am I
that's,
missing?
that's something that that's something that the borough of Red Bank needs to start.
You don't remember
accepting.
Schlumberger?
Yeah.
I do.
I think that's something that the borough of Red Bank needs to start to accept as a part of the normal course of things. We replace computers, we replace audio
Yeah.
equipment, we replace vehicles. These are all things that we have to replace.
Michael,
We need to
it's
reinvest into the parking utility, you know, and that's part of the process. Whether it's the kiosks and the meters, you've got to reinvest in the equipment to ensure that, one, it's modern, it provides the functionality to the users that it needs to, and that the technology in there doesn't become obsolete. I mean, just like the computer modems and networking devices become obsolete, same thing with those types of devices.
28 towns had to abandon their equipment entirely when 2G service was abandoned by Verizon, and it was moved to 3G, and the equipment that 28 towns bought in that couple of years was not upgradable.
It's like fully investing in Laserdiscs.
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, going back to when the mayor was on the council and they bought meters that took quarters, they still work.
They did work.
Those
By
ana-
the
the
way,
old analog
quarter meters
system,
are still
right?
working.
Right.
So, Tom, all kidding aside, are you still the consultant in Asbury Park?
No, I haven't been there since Terry Reedy was the BA. I say that because I can't remember what year that was.
Because I know from visiting Asbury, they've done away with their kiosks altogether, and they've gone strictly to a mobile app and license plate app. And so my thought is, why would we go to, mechanical
They have-
technology
They have
if,
kiosks.
They have kiosks now.
Yeah, they have, they use them even for beach passes.
They have one on the beach.
It's theoretically possible
But
to
you-
go app only
but it's
and
by
not have,
zone as
and not
well,
have
right?
hardware. I'm
But
doing
you
it
can do it on your phone.
in Harrison on 5 or 6 blocks around the PATH station, where the only way to pay will be with an app. But that's long-term parking, and it's for commuters generally. And so it's a little easier to administer, a little easier to explain to people. But to get everyone to use the app and not provide hardware for 30-minute parking is
You have-
rather difficult.
You've got to provide some
Alternative
manual type of
way to-
operation,
Absolutely.
especially in the downtown. It's just not an app by itself.
we save,
But I think Asbury,
save those old quarter meters that you bought many moons ago.
I still
we
have
can
orders.
paint them, make them really nice, make maybe Monegasque stripes on
Well,
them.
remember that they cost you $55,000 for a parking study because the machines you have don't provide any management information. So you had nothing on which to base your thinking about the future of parking in town. So at a minimum, modern equipment will provide you with good management information.
Don't get me wrong, I think we're moving in the right direction. Traditionally, as Councilman Zippert just said, some of us around the table and in the audience remember when we were talking about the state-of-the-art technology, which was Schlumberger, which went nowhere, and it was replaced in 6 months or a year. So these things do change, but in the past, when we have graduated from one system to the other, there have been opportunities for us to at least deploy some of the existing machinery in other areas to keep it going for a while. That's why I was asking the question, what are we doing with them? Because these machines, if I recall correctly, did come from the Asbury parking system that they had implemented, if I'm not mistaken.
This was one of the brands that they used. They're
Right.
also one of the towns that had to dump that generation of equipment that they bought in 2G service.
Okay.
Can I, just really quickly, with the new, meters that are going, can we just, I don't know if we've covered in a public meeting yet, like what payment options would be possible on those new
The
newer systems?
kiosks.
With the, systems that would be for the individual parking spaces?
Oh, we haven't done that yet. That's forthcoming. We're looking at the public presentation, possibly next Wednesday.
Okay, cool.
On the 18th, right?
18.
Nice.
Anybody else have any questions at all? I think we've asked you too much already.
No, thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Charlie? All right, we got your report. Thank you for an extraordinarily great summer. And you and your staff have been Herculean in all of your efforts, so thanks for the summary. Okay, now you're going to talk about opportunities for individuals with disabilities.
There's not much on that matter, just the resolution, if there's any questions on it.
No, we think it's great. I mean, we ought to be moving more in that regard, yeah. Okay, any questions of Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie, we asked, or I asked for the breakdown of the summer camp participants, residencies and scholarships and things like that.
It's in,
Is it in the
Yeah.
report?
Yeah.
It was in a supplemental
Yeah, it was in
report.
the
There was a
report.
regular report and then a camp report.
Okay.
Summer camp summary.
Thank you. I
Okay.
didn't see that.
Any
Yeah,
other questions?
Residents, out of towners.
Okay.
Thanks for everyone's
Thanks, Charlie.
involvement
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.
Patriots Day.
Thank you for all your hard work, Charlie.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Techie, how are the seniors adapting to the temporary space that you guys have us to?
They're doing okay. We're starting to do a little bit more activities. We're back to doing bingo. They started up a Pekino game on Friday, September 27th. We're gonna have our end of the summer. It's not gonna be a cookout. It's gonna be like a luncheon, like a party. Because we can't cook out over there. We can't do a grill in the parking lot. And we're gonna team up with the church's knitting club when they get together. So we're trying to mingle everything, get their congregation in with
That's
us
great.
too.
And attendance has been pretty constant?
Pretty good, yeah. Today for bingo, we had about 35 people for bingo, so yeah.
Bingo.
Bingo.
That's great.
So, and they're getting lunch, so that's a good thing. We're all in one location now, so they can eat and participate with one another.
And meals can still go out?
And meals can still go out.
Super. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn? So, the last time, you took up a great deal of time. We had a lot of questions for you. You answered them very adequately, and we appreciate it. And we really got a terrific session. We got your report, thank you. We're moving forward with motor vehicle service stations. No, we're moving forward with the transit village, right? So which one do you want to talk about?
Sure, there's four ordinances that you asked for last time. One was a group of three that deals with implementing the transit village, and those are in your packet. And we dealt with those in a couple of ways. One, we did design standards, so there's a relatively thick one in there for design standards that would just be in what the transit village zone is.
It was riveting. It was riveting reading.
It is, yes, I can read it for you if you want.
No, I did that once today, thanks.
We'll bring Dostoevsky in.
Yeah, one dealt with vehicle-related uses in the various zones that would be in the transit village, and that just says that things like drive-through banks and motor vehicle-related uses are no longer permitted, so that's deleting a bunch of permitted uses. And then the last one dealt with the overlay zone. We have a transit village overlay zone, or train station overlay zone rather. And this one, we basically just did a semantic change where we just crossed out the word overlay in the zoning. I'm not sure that's going to pass muster with the folks at down at Transit.
Do they watch our
Village.
council meetings or
Cross
not?
out?
Do they watch our council meetings or not?
Well, hopefully.
I hope they don't hear this
Maybe we
part.
can delete that piece of the tape. But I mean, that seemed to be their objective, and the worst thing that can happen is they'll just come back with another comment. We'll have to do something more
We
severe.
can't be the only ones.
Yeah, I thought the whole comment was a little misguided, but nevertheless,
Right.
we have to deal with it, and that's what we're trying to do. And the other one that you requested, not related to transit villages, was dealing with the HB zone, the zone out on Newman Springs Road. Right now we allow gas stations and retail uses, but not gas stations with retail uses. So this ordinance would allow those to be together, combined. There were some other nice little things in there, like putting in a generator and some plug-in electric vehicle charging stations. And some
So does
other
anybody have any questions on that? Because I think that there was some discussion on that. Or has everybody's questions been answered by?
Just want to say out loud again on the record that it's no drive-throughs. Right, no drive-throughs in the HB.
I'm sorry, no
We
what?
put the no drive-throughs.
That's it, I just
Yeah,
wanted
no
to say
drive-through.
out
Yeah,
loud
that-
again.
yeah.
Yeah, over and over again. Okay, cool.
I think that was the major issue, Councilwoman.
I know that,
that
I'm
some
just
of us
making it
had.
said on record again,
Yeah.
just so that, thank you. That's all.
And just for clarification, this only applies to that one zone. It does not spill out over into any other zone.
No, the HB zone's, I don't know, half to 2/3 of the
Right.
Newman Springs Road, half that's in Red Bank.
Again, like Councilwoman Trujillo, I just want to get on the record.
Thank you, yeah, we understand, we just wanted it said out loud again.
All right.
Thank you.
Does any other questions?
No, I mean, your ordinance, is that yours or not?
I put that on there, because it will fall under land use.
Right.
But, there was discussion at a previous meeting about the need for, codifying that. I've created an, application, what that would look like, and the process. We've already got some requests. Greg is working on an ordinance. Just wanna see if there's any questions or thoughts or feedback on that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on it? Then just direct it to the administrator.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn.
Thanks for your work.
Thanks.
Okay, Fred.
Hi, everyone.
activity report for August.
Yeah, we got it, so, anybody have any questions on the actual report?
We got it.
Okay, good. Thanks. Highlights include an increase in the cost of construction, including new construction, alteration, and demolition, increases in permits issued, increase in fees collected, an increase in scheduled and completed inspections, and an increase in closed permits. And the year-to-date quantities were corrected because I discovered an error in the spreadsheet.
I see the year-to-date close permits is 1,049. That's phenomenal. That's incredible.
You're doing a great job.
Good job, Brad.
That's really awesome.
It's gonna be harder until we fill the resignation of the additional individual though, which is on the agenda. I did email all of you about that, so I'd like to, probably the first October meeting, I'll have a resolution to ratify and appointment of that.
We okay with that? Yeah, let's move on with it. Okay, thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's do the follow-up. Okay, how about the clerk? We got your report, thank you.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody has any questions of Pam? Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Pleasure.
See.
A lot of Oprah requests.
Well, yeah, to speak to our state not our state senator, but the senator from Bergen County, who keeps on liberalizing more and more requests. And that's fine, I'm okay with open public meeting requests and all that. However, most clerks, at least that I know of, are saying that Oprah requests of the most varied kind are taking up anywhere between 30 to 35% of their time, which takes them away from the public. And invariably, if you take a look at the statistical requests where they come from, it's half of them are from the same people.
Yeah.
But the law says we have to do it, we will do it. All I'm saying is that the state should make some sort of provisions for at least state assistance to municipalities in dealing with the statutory obligation, instead of passing laws and then leaving it up to the taxpayers to pay for them.
Hmm.
I think the things a lot of clerks are running
That's
into.
the council, we support transparency.
The purpose of the law, I believe, was to allow citizen access to documents, but people are just vaguely requesting any and all everything, and the courts are more and more finding, and they're not really asking for documents, they want us to research and find what they're looking for.
Right.
When the intent was to
Do their
guarantee
job.
them access to things they knew existed.
Right.
But the courts are tending to fall on the requester's side, not our side, and it's
Right.
really creating a burden.
Yeah, like we want to be as transparent as possible at all times, but it sounds.
If the requester can tell me what they're looking for,
Right.
I'm absolutely guaranteed to provide it, but if they can't identify it, they're kind of relying on us to do their research and figure, and it's, normally you would deny that, but the courts are finding it right there.
Thank you, Pam. See, any?
There's a resolution on the agenda for this evening to authorize submission of an Opportunity Zone Challenge Grant. That's a grant that was discussed at the last redevelopment agency meeting. The Red Bank Redevelopment Agency would be the lead strategic partner on this. We are partnering with a number of other places, but what this grant is a grant through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. They're going to provide 5 $100,000 grants to opportunity zones around the state. We have a 1 in 15 chance of winning such a grant. We've got a great team working on this, and what it would do is help us to develop a plan on feasibility and marketing and investing as part of our opportunity zones. So it won't actually, because opportunity zones are largely in the hands of developers, for the most part investors. This grant by the EDA is to encourage municipalities to find ways in which they can develop programs and work with the investors and the developers to make opportunity zones more appealing and promote economic growth in that municipality. So we were designated as an opportunity zone by the president at the request of the governor last year, and the state is finally, after the IRS figured out the rules on opportunity zones and what they mean, the state is now trying to work with municipalities to see some sort of tangible benefit from these OZs. So we'd like to submit this grant. Deadline is coming soon, and hopefully we will prevail.
So who's on that
If there's any
team?
objection, I'm gonna be putting it on the consent agenda.
Who's on that team?
So right now, the redevelopment agency consultant, Ken DeRoberts, the redevelopment agency attorney, Walter Denson, Melanie, our grant writer, Glenn, and myself have been working on this.
And again, this is to help promote investment and development in the borough?
Not at all.
It's to find,
It's opportunity zones, which is not just development, but also employment opportunities as a result of those developments.
Just allows new avenues of like venture capital.
Not just residential development, but luring businesses and, employment opportunities, stuff like that.
we're trying to make our opportunity zone, leverage the opportunity zone designation from an economic development perspective. And that, as the mayor said, would incorporate employment opportunities, investment, development, the whole slew of things. Whatever, opportunity zones offer, we're trying to make sure that we can leverage those benefits at Red Bank, so that designation just doesn't sit idle and mean nothing to us.
Okay, so I admit that I don't know enough about the opportunity zone to go deeper, but, okay, thank you. I'll have to do some
Typical
homework.
example
with you later.
I'll do some homework.
typical example will be the relocation and the transfer of a lot of employees in a previously abandoned factory at Chestnut Street and the railroad tracks as a result of the relocation of Detmold's corporation into Red Bank along the train tracks, which will be employing a lot of other people from our West Side district, a lot of young people, hopefully. Yeah,
And so they benefit from the opportunity zone
Yes,
because
that is one example of it's the property, those properties are in the economic opportunity zones. So there are incentives that the federal government tax program gives them to make those movements. And fortunately, Red Bank is one of those opportunity zones.
even though that project was already underway.
No,
before
part of the
we
project
designated-
was underway, the residential part of the project was underway, if you recall.
So the second, let's call it the second phase of
The
their
second
project.
phase is that they're relocating their corporate headquarters there and their employees.
And that enables them to participate in the opportunity zone program.
Correct. And that's what our governor spoke about so eloquently when the ribbon cutting took place a couple of months ago. What's that? Yeah, please.
There were two reports, one from IT and one from grants. I have updated the grant spreadsheet as well, which you all have access to. Any questions on either IT or grants? And just put it on your radar, the best practices inventory. As of the preparation of the agenda, the state still had not sent us the best practices inventory. I just received it, Pam, yesterday. So I put it on here because I want you to be aware that this is something that is going to be happening next month. So probably the first meeting, we have to adopt a resolution altering the submission of the best practices inventory. So in order to get that done in time by the state deadline, the October meeting is going to be the resolution bearing meeting. So Peter, myself, and Pam will be working on that. It will likely include some components from a land use perspective, which Glenn helped out on last year. And actually, this Opportunity Zone Challenge Grant is one of the things that came about from this best practices inventory last year. OZ municipalities had to fill out a survey and request some information and indicate and provide some information to the state. We did that, and as a result, the state is putting together a lot of OZ programs from based on the response and the feedback from the municipalities. So this inventory, for those of you that don't know, is the DCA, the State's Department of Community Affairs mechanism to ensure that municipalities are following certain guidelines and best practices, and while they're not required by law, the state uses those to potentially withhold state aid if you're not in compliance with a certain number of items on that inventory.
When is the deadline on that?
I believe it's October 30th. I haven't had a chance to review it yet, I just received it yesterday. I just wanted to let you all know. Right, yeah, every year it does change.
It's an ambulatory form.
That's all I have there.
So everybody got to report on the courts, and I believe that and fire, we got the fire, you're not here for the fire chief, are you? We got the fire chief's report, and unless there's any objections, no need to go over it. and same thing with our municipal court administrator. So, other than correspondence, which we'll deal with at the regular meeting, is there anything else? Okay, any members of the public, even though we're going right into the municipal regular meeting right now? If not, motion to close the public?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? All right, so we're gonna adjourn, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
5 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we'll come in and we'll start the regular meeting.